Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51%, a show about women reshaping our world. In a special edition marking the International Day for the Elimination of Violence against Women and Girls, we report on a program here in France which is educating men accused of domestic abuse about how to rewire their behaviour. And I'll be speaking shortly to Sal Naseem on the need for men to be allies. The former director for London at the Independent Office for Police Conduct is going to talk about what's it like to confront a workplace culture which is steeped in misogyny. But first, and to quote UN Women, violence against women and girls remains one of the most prevalent and pervasive human rights violations in the world. An estimated 736 million women, almost 1 in 3 across the globe, have been subjected to domestic violence at least once in their lives. It's also been made that much more worse by post-pandemic effects, conflicts, and climate change. For instance, here in France in 2022, an estimated 244,000 women and girls were victims of domestic abuse. In Lille, in northern France, a program is teaching men accused of domestic abuse and violence how to control their anger, admit wrongdoing, and relearn how to love without harming anybody. This France 2 report is voiced by Aurore Dupuis.
Behind these walls, alleged perpetrators of domestic violence are closely monitored. As they await trial, they're not allowed to come anywhere near the victims. Instead, they're offered some help. In Lille, northern France, the Judicial Control and Investigation Service deals with more than 400 people suspected of abusing their partners. The organisation provides them with psychologists, social workers, and legal experts.
Bonjour, monsieur. On va s'installer? Allez-y.
This 51-year-old man arrived in December. It's the second time he meets with his therapist and is struggling to cope.
It's hard for me to accept being here.
Why?
Because I feel like I'm being judged. It's like, oh, he assaulted his partner, but that's simply not what happened. I pushed her, but I didn't think I'd break her ribs, unfortunately. I do blame myself for that. I really didn't mean to do that.
The aim is for the perpetrator to understand the accusations held against him.
If he doesn't acknowledge the facts, we will try to ask him questions like, why is there a complaint against you? What happened to your partner? How are things going in the relationship? And so on.
For privacy reasons, the rest of the session is held behind closed doors. Here, awareness is also raised collectively in group meetings.
Ahmed exprime à François. J'aimerais me remettre à la guitare, mais je ne parviens pas à trouver le temps à cause des activités que j'ai avec toi. François hausse le ton.
Several scenarios are discussed and analysed, but some can't always identify the problem.
Il n'y a pas de situation de violence, selon vous?
Non, il n'y a pas de violence dans ce que j'ai expliqué.
For others, it's an eye-opener.
Tu as la domination physique et la domination verbale. Tu vas avoir la domination physique, tu vas la frapper pour avoir le dessus.
Debates and role-play help them process what happened.
We're still learning today, even if we did something ages ago, and that's positive. We take in some valuable advice to avoid repeating the mistakes we made in the past.
Role-playing helps divert their attention from topics that can be too intense for them. It's easier to address these issues through play. We wouldn't be able to get the message across if we just stared into each other's eyes.
For those who want to focus on their therapy, on-site accommodation is available, with 11 apartments at their disposal. Over 6 months, their progress is monitored by judicial supervisors.
On n'a pas eu d'incident cette semaine, ça a été.
They're regularly in touch with the prosecutor's office.
2 semaines avant l'audience, on envoie un rapport.
2 weeks before the hearing, we send a report to the magistrates, who will use these elements to decide on the legal response. So the outcome depends on what we tell them about the support system.
De ce qu'on pourra lui dire sur l'accompagnement.
Last summer, this 38-year-old man sprayed his ex-partner with highly flammable substance. Today, he says he deeply regrets his behaviour.
I remember what I did very well. I didn't set her on fire, but there are no words to describe it, actually. I feel worthless.
He was sentenced to 18 months of probation, during which he continues to be monitored here.
I realize that I need you. I need more structure. Maybe not forever, but for now, I need this framework.
For him, support is key to help abusers get out of a vicious cycle.
If you're convicted, okay, no problem. But if there's no follow-up, it's totally useless. Here I've worked on myself, on my personality. I've worked on my desires and also on my anger management.
The team that works with him says his progress is a success.
We know that in terms of recidivism, we are reducing the risks.
In France, there were more than 244,000 victims of domestic violence in 2022. That's 15% more than the previous year.
Joining me now from London is Sal Naseem, a former director for London at the Independent Office for Police Conduct, and who is now an inclusive culture specialist. He's also campaigned publicly about the need to address male violence. Sal, thank you so much for your time. We've just seen a report there about a program here in France which is teaching abusers about how to overcome violent behaviour. It appears that when we talk about ending violence against women and girls, we don't focus enough attention on those male perpetrators, do we?
I totally agree with that, and there's an expectancy that women need to lead the charge and the need for change in this issue, but actually that's not the case. It needs to be us men that need to kind of look at ourselves, and it's our behaviour that needs to change. Some men are at the heart of these issues, but all men ultimately need to kind of look at the issue of male violence against women and girls. And there's a whole spectrum of things that we can kind of look and discuss and unpack here around what it means around masculinity and what the consequences and effects of some of that toxic masculinity are on women, and sadly, when they become victims.
I'm interested, first of all, though, Sal, to know more about your own personal journey in coming to this point where you decided to go public and start talking about the need to end male violence.
Well, my kind of voice in this area has really kind of come much later in life. I was the former director for London at the Independent Office for Police Conduct. It was an independent body, and we used to investigate the worst forms of police misconduct. I had oversight of the Metropolitan Police. And in that role, I seen victims, and I seen female victims of misogyny. Violence against women and girls is a spectrum. And as a man, I needed to go on that journey to understand what I needed to do better. And as a result of that introspection, I started speaking really vocally and on national platforms around the need for men to be leading the solution and around the need for male allyship.
And as you mentioned there, Sal, there's clearly a problem with the London Metropolitan Police. In September this year, it was revealed that some 1,600 police officers and staff in the force are being investigated for alleged violence against women or sexual abuse. In your capacity as an investigator, how tough was it for you to witness firsthand what clearly was a culture so steeped with misogyny?
This time last year, we uncovered a culture of all forms of discrimination, including misogyny, at Charing Cross Police Station in London, which involved Metropolitan Police officers. Now, this involved serving Metropolitan Police officers bullying other serving Metropolitan Police officers, largely white male officers, and the women were officers of colour and were women. Now, some of these exchanges and some of this culture was captured in some of the most horrific WhatsApp exchanges, which actually showed what these officers thought, how they conducted themselves. And in terms of trying to change that culture, one of the decisions that I made was to actually publish, unredacted, what these WhatsApp exchanges look like as part of trying to lift the lid on what this toxic culture looked like, not just so that members of the public could understand, but also, really importantly, what other serving officers could see what some of their colleagues were suffering, some of their female colleagues who were victims of misogyny, who were victims of sexism. and sadly, we're victims of bullying and harassment.
Of course, we are talking here about the police force, but it's also attitudes towards women coming in to report cases of domestic abuse and violence. So I want to ask you, and this is a broader question, not just relating to the police itself, but just generally, how can men become allies in this campaign to end violence against women and girls?
And let me root this back to personal experience. Look, I'm a person of colour. I'm South Asian. I've been a victim of racism my whole life. Why should it be incumbent on me to lead the change on the fight against racism? In the same way, it shouldn't be incumbent on women to lead this fight against violence against women and girls and misogyny. The starting point for men is to actually just be honest and with ourselves and realise that their work that needs to be done in this space is with us, and it's with the next generation, and it starts with a variety of things. It starts with the introspection in terms of becoming those allies. It's about forming that intent to actually try and do something, because sometimes women can be caught up in this kind of culture where misogyny and toxic masculinity is kind of at the heart of the issue, and we become used to it. So breaking that kind of group thing, breaking the acceptance of what is normal, and starting that journey around becoming allies and giving voice to women's concerns, because it's so important. Because as I said, it's not women that need to change, it's us men that need to change.
Sal Naseem, it's been great speaking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me, Annette.
And that's all we have for you for this edition, but we'd love to hear from you. So do reach out to us via Facebook, Instagram or X, formerly known as Twitter, of course. So until our next show, bye for now.